Each year, athletes from across the globe converge on Haines City, Florida, test the limits of their bodies and the resilience of their spirits at Ironman Florida 70.3. This documentary invites you behind the scenes of an athlete's return to triathlon after a forced 4-year hiatus, a story of grit, ambition, and unwavering dedication. From early morning swims to relentless training rides beneath the hot and humid summer sun and pounding footfalls on winding roads, we will witness the evolution of a competitor with a humble and grateful heart striving for redemption. But this is more than a race. It is a voyage through adversity and triumph. Through moments of doubt and bursts of inspiration, there will be setbacks and surprises, victories large and small, and the discovery of the true meaning of perseverance. Join us as we chronicle the milestones and missteps, the sweat and celebration culminating in one unforgettable day. This will not only be a tale of athletic determination, but a portrait of the human spirit, undaunted, unbreakable, and ever reaching for the extraordinary. Welcome to Ironman Florida 70.3, an endurance athlete's journey. Welcome, everyone, to Ironman Florida 70.3, an endurance athlete's journey. I'm your host, Coach Justin, head coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing. This is the video that's tied to week 12 of the 16-week plan training for Ironman Florida 70.3 down in Haines City, Florida on December 14th, 2025. Let's see, this was a rollback week for me. So a little bit of a reminder, the idea of a rollback week is to reduce volume in order to shed some accumulated fatigue. And you can see that it may not have worked very well as I'm having a hard time speaking. It is designed to reduce accumulated fatigue, also give you a little bit of a mental reprieve from training as the volume reduced. So this week I had a planned training volume of 15 hours and 17 minutes. When it was all said and done by the end of the week, I had executed a total of 15 hours and 42 minutes. So just a little bit over this week, but still within the ballpark. Overall, I think it was a decent week. I did struggle this week a little bit. You know, as I said, the point behind this rollback week is to shed some fatigue and kind of like rest a little bit. But I found that I was still kind of struggling. I just didn't feel rested. I was still kind of struggling a little bit. This was a week where I had my son, so there was still that level of stress that's there. And there was a race that was planned at the end of the week. So I did the Richmond 8K race. So I talked a little bit before. The original plan was to do the half marathon, but given how things are going with this training plan and my lack of focused run training, I just did not feel like it was worth the risk of trying to pull off a half marathon effort and then try and recover from it, given that we've only got 4 weeks till race day. And kind of like my longest run to date in this plan, I've hit it a couple times, was like 5.6 miles. So it just didn't feel like it was just a wise choice to go forward with doing the half marathon. So I dropped down to the 8K. It was a very good decision to make. So I'll talk a little bit about that when I get into the run segment on how that went. But again, when you have kind of like this, I mean, I treat all races the same. I mean, you know, my prep for them may be different, but I still, you know, am nervous. I still have a little bit higher anxiety. You're still having to get up really early and push forward with trying to get there on time, find parking, and all the added stress that goes into race day. Still, you know, it was mentally exhausting, not to mention just executing a race. So, and that also meant that I had to move things around in the training plan. So it kind of broke the routine a little bit. I was shifting workouts around to get a better sequence, given that, you know, normally on Saturday is when I do my long ride and run brick at this stage of the plan, but that had to be moved to Sunday. So that meant that, you know, some of my swims got shifted around, some of the strength sessions got shifted, different run workouts that normally are on certain days got pushed to other days. And so it was just all kind of out of whack. And I could feel that shift in the plan. And I don't know if that maybe contributed a little bit to, how I was feeling, where I just didn't feel relaxed. I didn't feel settled. I didn't feel rested. I did get some additional recovery stuff going on. So I think Friday night I spent the evening using my Theragun and my Normatec system to kind of prepare myself for the race on Saturday morning. And then with the race on Saturday, came home in the evening, I got back in the Normatec, did a little bit of light. I tried to go light on the Theragun because, my muscles were pretty sensitive from the race. But, I still got some of that in to kind of break those up a little bit and soften the muscle, and then got in the Normatec to push out some of the excess fluid that was in there and to kind of help with the soreness so that I would be prepared to go into my long ride and run brick on the next day, which was going to be on Sunday. So mentally, it was kind of just a stressful week. There was a lot that was going on. It feels almost like every day there's just something else, something that I need to do or something that I should be doing. And so my brain just feels like it's constantly engaged. If I try and take like an evening off, my brain is sitting there thinking it's not really getting a break because my brain is thinking about, well, I still have this to do and I still have that to do and this and this. So, when I agreed to kind of do these videos and the additional content that came from it, I'm glad that I'm doing it. Don't get me wrong. I think this is a valuable effort and time well spent, but it is a lot of work. And it was a lot more work than I kind of thought it might be. And so, with this kind of content, and then I have the podcast on top of it and the scheduling of that, and, just the editing and pushing things out and social media, it's a lot more than it has been on any of my other races ever. And so I've never been kind of this busy with outside work and going into a prep for a race. Mentally, I'm feeling tired. Physically, I feel like I thought I should feel given this volume. So, my legs are sore. Yes. Quads are sensitive. Yes. High hamstrings, sensitive, glutes. Yes. All of it. So, but it's all par for the course. I expected it. One thing that I didn't kind of really think about was just the mental engagement of this process and dealing and trying to execute a high volume plan. Mentally, it's challenging. And I didn't really account, I'll be honest, I didn't account for it when I started thinking about this plan and coming up with it. There's tons of workouts. Some things take a lot of planning and execution, trying to sequence workouts appropriately and properly so that I can get enough recovery in between sessions. What things should I do in the morning and which ones should I do in the evening? But then when you look at the evening workout, you say, well, what am I doing the next morning? So you have to kind of make sure that you've got enough recovery time in between those efforts. So it's not just what you're doing that day, it's what you're doing today and what you're doing in the morning, what you did yesterday. There's a lot of thought in terms of coming up with the proper sequence of workouts. And I think a lot of athletes don't really think about that very much, but coaches do. That is one of our primary jobs as a coach, is to properly sequence workouts. And it's hard, when you're self-coached. I'm the athlete and I'm the coach. And so it's hard to kind of put on the multiple hats and trying to think things through, and it's challenging. So I'm not quite sure kind of what else to say about how the overall week went. I think that gives a proper summary on kind of how I'm feeling. I do know that we're 4 weeks out from the race, and I'm counting down the weeks because it feels like kind of once the race is over, then I kind of get maybe a little bit of more of a mental break than I do a physical one. Yes, the physical one is coming, but I'm kind of hoping that I get a little bit of a mental break as well. It's starting to feel real right now with it only being 4 weeks away till race day. So things are starting to get more serious, and it's kind of wearing on me a little bit. But I'm surprised that it feels this way this far out, because 4 weeks is a decent amount of time to where, you should still be feeling pretty good and just like not mentally tired like this. But I don't know if it's just a combination of all the work and, a high volume plan. Um, I am counting down the days. I'm looking forward to the race, and I'm looking forward to it being over to get a little bit of a break. Let's dive right into the main components of the training plan. So let's start off like the run, like what we usually do. I had a total of 18 and a half miles this week. I felt like I had a good run week. I still kept things at a zone 2 effort for the most part. There were some progressions that were in there, but I was a little bit more conservative, especially since I had the 8K at the end of the week. And really, I kept having to remind myself, this is the purpose of a rollback week, is we want to decrease fatigue. We want to give a little bit of a recovery, active recovery to the body. We're still keeping things engaged and we're still pushing forward, but I didn't want to stack on more fatigue with increased intensity. So I did keep things at the zone 2 effort. So I'll talk a little bit about the 8K. The 8K went fabulous. It went way better than I thought it would. I was still kind of kicking around like how I was going to execute it, whether I was going to race. What I did was I set up in my watch, in my Garmin, I created the workout. So I created a structured workout of the 7-minute run and 1-minute walk. And I made the workout like an hour and 20 minutes long. I purposely made it long just in case, hey, I have to account for, if things just unravel. But I said, I want my watch to tell me and keep track of when to run and when to walk. I didn't want to be glued to my technology and just be stressing about it. So that worked perfectly. I really liked having that structure. So I think that's something that I'm a little bit closer to executing that on race day. I feel comfortable with how it worked. And I did like that I didn't have to kind of stay on top of it. It just told me when to run and when to walk, and it was perfect. I did execute. I beat all of my expectations from the race. I executed the 7-to-1 run walk strategy perfectly. There was no hiccup or anything like that. I had a negative split of the race, and the pacing that I had was way better than I thought that I would see. So it was a big boost of confidence, and I felt good after it was all done. So, man, it was a big boost of confidence. So I do like how that went. It wasn't a PR by a long shot. So I looked at all of my other kind of like 8K races, and it wasn't my fastest, but it wasn't my slowest either. That wasn't kind of like what I was looking for. But I do know that I got some validation for the bike work that I have been doing, because on this course for the 8K, the last half mile is all downhill. And it's like, I calculated it, and it's a 5% grade downward. So it's negative 5% grade down, and my quads held up well. They were definitely hot by the time I got down to the bottom of the hill, but I managed the stride, I managed the impact, and it really gave me some good validation of how beneficial bike training is to run training. It does build the same cardiovascular engine. It's not a perfect substitute. I believe I would consider it to be a good complement to run training. You do get to engage muscles a little bit differently than you do when you run. So I'm confident and happy with the strength of my legs going into this race. And this just helped kind of solidify that confidence. I don't have much time left for training. We do have 4 weeks, but 2 of those weeks is where I've allocated to tapering. So really, I just have, 2 more weeks of training. So I don't believe that's a whole lot more time to really find and get comfortable with a different run walk strategy. So I think I've settled on the 7-to-1 that I'll execute for the race. So I'm moving forward with the assumption that that's the execution strategy that I'm going to use for Florida is the 7-to-1. We'll see how the next 2 weeks go, but I don't feel like I have enough time to really kind of like set a foundation on a different one, like going to like an 8-to-1, getting comfortable with it in zone 2, and then kind of introduce a little bit more of intensity to it before I taper. I don't see the benefit of trying to push forward with that. What I do see benefit in is sticking with the 7-to-1 and maybe starting to introduce a little bit more intensity to my runs going forward. I have to be careful there because, these last 2 weeks are still like full blown high volume stuff, like 19 to 20 hours, and layering on some intensity in the run. I don't know how my body would react. Rather than trying to introduce a little bit of intensity in several of the runs, I may just kind of introduce some intensity in maybe one of those runs, and then just use some high zone 2 stuff, and then an easier recovery run, maybe. I don't know, but I don't want to run the risk of a flare up of tendonitis or anything like that, any kind of additional inflammation, just by trying to push the envelope for speed that I may not even utilize for the race. So that's where I see my run training going from here forward. For the bike, I had a pretty solid week on the bike, with more of those ramp up style workouts and some endurance intervals. So if you listen back to some of the previous episodes, or you can go to tabularasaracing.com, go to the page where it says Ironman Florida 70.3. You can scroll down and you can see each week's training plan in the picture gallery that's there. And at the very bottom of the page, there's downloadable PDFs for each week. You can see the actual workouts that I'm executing, and you'll see kind of these ramp up workouts. So it's the build up. So typically we'll go like zone 2, 3, 4, 5, and then drop back down 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the kind of workouts that I've been executing now, along with some longer endurance intervals where we're pushing like zone 2 to zone 3, 20 to 25 minute long intervals, working on maintaining focus and that constant cadence, keeping that rolling forward, because I see that that's going to be valuable for this particular course in Haines City. So what else? Let's see. After the race on Saturday, I had already built in just a recovery spin on the bike. I debated on whether to keep it because when I built the plan, I was under the impression that I was going to be doing a half marathon. So it definitely made sense to throw in the recovery spin after that race. I don't typically do these. I don't think I've ever done it in one of my other plans. It just kind of seemed right. It's something, I just felt like I was just being led to put that workout in as a way to flush the legs out and prepare for the next day. It was also validated because I use a similar strategy after massages, where I'll do like a zone 2 interval-based workout after a deep tissue massage as a way to flush out the muscle, loosen them back up again. And it's been working really, really well. And so that's why I kind of kept it. I was like, this seems prudent. And I'm glad I did, because I believe that it helped with the delayed onset muscle soreness that I probably would have felt on Sunday, and my legs felt better. Yeah, my quads were still pretty sensitive on Sunday, but not as bad as it probably could have been. If I had just ignored doing like some Normatec and some Theragun stuff, and that, I believe that the bike flush was just as beneficial to those as those other things. So it is something that I think I'm going to keep in plans going forward, something that I may have, I'll build into some of my athlete plans as well for those that like to cycle. Sometimes I just coach runners, and so they may not particularly care for a bike workout like that, in which case I'll probably just give them like a walking kind of recovery day the next day or same day or whatever. But I found that getting on the bike really, really works for me, and I'll see how that would work for some of my other athletes. The long bike this week, to be honest with you, I think it felt good just going shorter. I know that there is value in going long like I have been, and I'm not changing that. But going into the day, knowing that I only had like 3.5 hour or like a 3 hour and 25 minute bike ride to do after doing 4.5 hours, like the past couple weeks. I was like, wow, that seems easier, even though 3.5 hours is nothing to shake a stick at. So I executed it 3 hours 30. I actually executed 3:36 on the bike and got in 67.1 miles. So I rode the same course, felt good. That was a hard ride. And not because, I did some hard intervals or, because it was long, but on Sunday, we had a fire advisory here in my area that was brought on because of really high winds. And so this was a great time to get out there on the bike and get some practice riding in the wind, with crosswinds, with the wind, against it, all of it. So wind training, especially if you have deep set carbon wheels, you get a good gust of crosswind and it can take that front tire and really spin it and turn you if you're not paying attention, and then all of a sudden you'll find yourself on the ground, which is not where you want to be. So it's really, really good practice to get out there in those kinds of conditions, especially if you expect them to be on race day. I expect there to be wind in Florida just because it makes sense. So it was a good excuse to get out there and get that done. We didn't have the same kind of wind on Saturday, which is when my normal long ride would have been. So this is kind of a blessing that I had this race and then I pushed my long ride to Sunday, because originally I had it brought forward into the week where I was going to be doing it on a weekday. But because I had my son and the additional responsibilities, it was hard to kind of dedicate 3.5 hours on the bike trainer in order to get that done. So when I originally made the plan, that's what I had done, was I had brought it forward. And then I said, no, this doesn't feel right. So I pushed it back and talked to my wife, and I talked to Stephanie, and I was just like, you know what? I feel like I need to push the bike to Sunday, but it means that we have to go to the early church service if we're going to go to church, which is what we did. So I had all my stuff packed, put the bike on the car, and we went to the early church service on Sunday, and then I just left straight from there to go on the bike ride. So ultimately, I think it was the best decision, and I got the most bang for my buck by doing it that way. By doing the harder ride gave me some better practice, better exposure, practice being present, being alert, know what's going on around me, trying to interpret the lay of the land. So if I know that I'm coming out of a tree line and we're riding in an area that's kind of open, like farmland and stuff, which I expect, I believe that this is what the course is like in Florida. Sometimes in those areas, you can get some nice crosswinds that'll come across like your front cockpit and can turn that wheel, like I said. So being able to kind of say, okay, this looks like an area that I may have some crosswinds. So let's be present, let's be locked and loaded, and, let's pay attention. And it's exactly what happened, because in those instances, I was getting some crosswinds, but I was prepared because I was alert. And so that's good practice that's going to materialize on race day, and really fine-tune and honing in those skills. I believe that's one of the consequences of poor cycling performance by many athletes today. Is the trainer is a fantastic tool. I use it a lot, but it has led to the worsening of bike skills. People just don't have the same bike handling skills. They don't have the same attention span on the bike. They're easy to kind of like zone out and just kind of sit there and pedal. They're being stimulated by screens and avatars and everything else. And I think that the heavy reliance of this particular environment is really having an impact on the quality of cyclists that we're seeing in races. So bottom line is, I think that there's a time and place for it, but there are other skills that you need to develop and you need to practice, and you can't do that on a trainer. And you can't do it, it's like I could have easily said, hey, I'm gonna sit inside today and I'm just gonna jump on the trainer. It's a 3.5 hour bike, so it's easier to kind of do on the trainer rather than doing like a 4.5. But you're like, it's only an hour difference, but that hour matters. when you're sitting on a trainer. And I could have said, hey, it's a shorter ride. It's easier logistic wise. And with the high winds, it just doesn't sound pleasant. But no, I made the choice. And I was like, I'm going to put myself in hard situations. I calculated the risk and it was worth it. And I'm glad I did. So this week, I had a total of close to 7 hours on the bike. So I was just shy of 7 hours. And it's a healthy decrease from what I've been doing. And over the past few weeks, I've been putting in 9 hours on the bike. So it's, I shaved off, a couple hours from the week and I felt it. I felt a little bit of a deload of the legs from the bike. The workouts were a little bit shorter. And so they were a little bit easier to execute and find motivation for. There was one bike session that I was just kind of fighting it. I think it was on the holiday. So this week we had a federal holiday. It was Veterans Day and I had the day off because it was a federal holiday. And so, I was filled up with doing coaching stuff and podcast related stuff. So I did my normal morning training and then I saved my bike session for the evening like I usually do. And that one took a little bit of internal dialogue because it had been like a long day and I was kind of struggling a little bit. And I was just tired, mentally tired, but I was like, just get it done. So bottom line, I think the bike week was good. Swim, it was a good week in the pool, I think. No wetsuit practice this week. Like I said, because I had my son this week, I didn't have the extra time to spend getting in and out of wetsuits and rinsing and drying and all kinds of other stuff. I just didn't have it. So I knew that I could come in the coming week and be able to get in another session with the wetsuit. And so that's what I've done is I've created next week's plan with a little bit of detail and I've got another wetsuit practice in there. But this week I just kind of executed status quo, did similar intervals than what I've been doing. My endurance effort were 600s, which is a big drop. It was about half. I think I did about 50%. So it felt good to only have to swim 600s rather than the longer stuff, but I still felt pretty strong in the water, and I think overall it was some good performance. Really, nothing really stands out about the swim training. So let's just move on to strength. So I still have my normal 2 sessions. Normally on a rollback week, I use it as kind of like a deload week where I'll decrease weight. But if you remember a couple of weeks back, I kind of changed the method for the strength stuff because I was finding it hard to recover from. And I decreased weight then. And I've just been kind of slowly kind of like maybe ramping up just a little bit, not too much, but I've kind of stayed right there. And so for the first strength session that I had, I did decrease some more to deload a little bit. To be honest with you, for the second session, I forgot to plan it out ahead of time. So I didn't really sit, like normally what I'll do is I'll sit down and I'll take a look at what I did in the last session. I'll look at my notes from the session saying, keep the progression, alter this, change this, go with that. And then I'll program my expectations into the workout. So I say, I'm going to aim for 15 reps at this weight, sets 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I set it ahead of time. So that way, all I do is when I go in, I just pull up the app and, hit start and execute it. And I know how much weight I'm going to be lifting in each of those sets. And I just roll through. I make those last minute decisions. I lifted to failure, but I didn't hit my rep goal. So I'll just change the number in the reps or I'll change the weights. Like this didn't feel good. So I'm changing the remaining sets because of this, but I take really good notes during my workout so that I kind of know what to execute the next time. But I got wrapped up in something in the morning, and so I think I probably ended up sleeping in a little bit and slept later than I would have liked a couple times during the week, and I forgot to change it ahead of time. So for that second set, I just went ahead and just said, I'm just going to do what I did last week and just execute that. That's what I did. So it wasn't a deload on the second session, but it was in the first. I missed a 20-minute core this week. So I broke my streak of 100% completion. So I got one red session this week in Training Peaks, but we'll try again next week for that. That kind of wraps up. I'm feeling kind of tired. It's getting late, and so I kind of wanted to kind of go through this a little bit quicker. Plus, it was a rollback week, so there's not a whole lot that is big deal kind of stuff. But I think that in general, the rollback week was needed. Absolutely, without a doubt, it was needed. I would have liked to have felt fresher throughout the week and at the end of the week than what I did. But I think by and large, it served its purpose. What I do want is to spend a little bit more time on the insight section of this video. So each week I'll talk about something that I've been thinking about throughout the week or any kind of insights that I have. And I want to go back to the video from last week where I said there was a question that was posed on social media about my lower run volume. And I had already started kicking around this idea of adding a little bit more minutes to just one run so that I can try and get some additional miles. And when I saw the message that was on social media, it kind of confirmed it for me a little bit. But after I did that whole video, I've just been really thinking about it this week. And I had to sit down with myself and really kind of be honest. And I sat down with Stephanie too, and I was like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Because she's a really, really good sounding board and helping me kind of like talk through some of these things. And I said that I don't know if I should be adding more minutes to this one run just so that I get some more miles. It wasn't sitting right with me. And I started thinking about it. And it's like, well, why am I looking to add, first of all? It's a valid question that was asked. And I had a concern already, but I feel like I was adding more volume out of fear of being underprepared, or feeling like if I could see more miles, then I would feel more prepared. Whether I was physically better prepared for it or not is a completely different question. Being able to just adding another 12 and a half minutes to one of my runs doesn't mean that I'm going to be fitter on race day. And so I said, well, really, why am I adding it then? And I feel like I was adding it out of fear and searching for some kind of confidence or self-assurance that I had prepared well for the race. I went into this training plan with the goal. I don't even know if goal is the right word for it, but with the commitment. That's the word that I'm looking for. With the commitment that I was going to trust God in my preparation for this race. Prayed before I created the plan. I was like, give me the plan that I need to as prepared as I can be, as recovered as I can be, and learn what I need to learn. So I created the plan. So I prayed for wisdom to do that. And I believe that's what I got. Now coming in and saying, well, now I'm going to add some more because, I'm afraid that I'm not running enough. I want to see at least, like 8 or 9 miles, in a run before race day. Before race day. To me, it's not going to make me more fit. It's not going to make me feel more prepared. It's not going to make me feel more confident that I can race effectively and race well. So why do it? I believe that my run training to date has been really, really well. I've seen paces that I haven't seen in a really long time. I'm feeling confident, and I believe that the performance in the 8K this weekend, where I saw some paces that I had not seen in a really long time, and I felt in control, relaxed, and I executed my plan because I went into it saying, hey, I want to do these first 2 intervals and pretend like I'm just coming off of the bike in Florida. And, I want to run relaxed and easy, not looking at pace, run by feel. The number is whatever it is, but I want to execute the plan. And once I get into like interval, 3, 4, and 5, once I kind of get where I see that I'm like at mile 3, knowing that I would have 2 more miles left to go, then I could kind of open things up a little bit and, increase the intensity. And that's what I did, and pulled off the negative split with an overall pace a lot lower than I thought that I would see. And so, I'm looking at it now, it's like, well, that's 5 miles. It's not a half marathon by any stretch of the imagination, but it is 5 miles. And I said to myself, you know what? After this run, could I go another 5 miles and feel confident? And I believe the answer is yes. I probably wouldn't have had the same execution strategy had I known that I was going to have to go 10 miles rather than just 5. But I feel like I could have executed a good plan and ran like I want to with the strategy that I'm using. So I don't feel like adding these extra minutes is going to do anything for me physiologically. It may do something mentally for me, but that's not worth it, honestly, because the mental stuff can be easily swayed. I could come off the bike and have a really hard bike in Florida, and now not going into the run really mentally they're 100%. So adding these extra minutes is going to make me more mentally strong. No, it's the accumulation of everything that I've done over the past 12 weeks is what's made me mentally strong. Not adding 12 and a half minutes to the run next week and then another 12 and a half minutes the week after that. That's not going to make me mentally strong. Like I said, it's what I've done. It's the entire portfolio of work is what's made me strong. So I felt like adding those 12 minutes was telling God that I didn't trust him, that I feel like I know better, and that, I don't want to see 5.6. I want to see 6 something, close to 7 next week. And then I want to see close to 8 the following week, because that's what I want to see. And, feel like I was telling him that I didn't trust him to deliver what I felt like he was promising that he would deliver with the contribution that I'm making to the process. He's shown me time and time again that, he goes before me, and that, my performance has been really, really good this year, and it's all been from him, and he's delivered it. So now coming down to my biggest race of the year, why would I tell him that I don't trust him now? He's not failed me yet. So I made the decision, and I went ahead and I changed that one workout from next week. I had already built in the additional time into it and built the intervals, and I removed it. I put it back to what it was originally. So I am not going to increase my run volume, because I feel like I said, that I'm telling God that I don't trust him, and I would be adding it for superficial reasons. So I believe that I'm on the right path, and I think that the performance that I saw in the 8K this week kind of gave me a little bit more validation behind that, and kind of helped me kind of solidify and see, yes, I am on the right path. Because not only did I see those paces during the race, but then I turned right around the next day, 60 plus 67 miles, I think is what I said. Yeah, 67.1 miles on the bike. High winds, crosswinds, accumulated from fatigue from the day before. I got off the bike and I still ran hard, but I ran relaxed. Hard in terms of paces that I didn't think correlated with the effort that I was putting in. I went into it, it's like, I'm going to run easy, I'm going to run relaxed. And then at the end of the run, I saw the paces and I was like, well, that's easy and relaxed, and it's faster than what I would think would be the result of that input. So I think that just did it for me, man. I feel like I'm on the right path, and I'm marching forward. I'm trusting God that he gave me the right plan that I needed. And I think that he gave it to me in such a way that to learn a valuable lesson, it's still a lesson that I'm fighting hard against and that I really don't want to learn. But then again, I have to learn, is to completely trust him, not try and take over the reins like I want to, and try and be in control. It's not an excuse to kind of just sit back and register for the race and then just don't do anything. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm still putting in effort. So I've got skin in the game, and I think this is it. So that's the end of week 12. Man, so rollback week, I've got week 13 coming up. We're back to full volume training for the next 2 weeks. And then I start my taper. I have a 2-week taper. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that and how I approach my tapers. Might be a little bit different than how some coaches may approach tapers, but I think it's going to be an interesting journey over the next 4 weeks as we get closer and closer to Ironman Florida 70.3. So thank you for tuning in. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you're listening to this on the Tabula Rasa Racing YouTube channel and you have not heard of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, this is also being released there. I'm one of the co-hosts of the podcast along with Coach Katie Kassane. We do a weekly podcast. Now we're pushing out content twice a week, with this episode being one of those, and then we come out with the normal content typically on the Thursday. So check us out. Check out some of those past episodes that's in the library. There will be a link to the podcast in the show notes. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, as part of the podcast, check out the Tabula Rasa Racing YouTube channel. Check out the website. All of the additional content that is being produced for this race is on that website. So go to tabularasaracing.com and go to the page that says Ironman Florida 70.3 and check that out. There you'll find all the videos that are there, along with all the workouts and a weekly training plan that's part of this prep. I am also taking on athletes for my roster. So we're getting close now to 2026. We're now in like mid-November. We have the holidays coming up and people are starting to think about races. A lot of races actually do like Black Friday kind of lower registration. So now is a really good time to get lower prices for race registrations. And if you want to try something different or step up to another level of race, and you're just like super busy and you're just tired of thinking of workouts to do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, how much of it should you do, and you just want to turn that over to somebody else. And so then all you have to do is just execute the plan. Check me out. So go to, like I said, the Tabula Rasa Racing website. I've got other videos that are there to talk about my coaching philosophy. There's a blog that I've written several articles about. You'll see some of my backstory on how I got into the sport, what it was like before I got into endurance sports. And there's a lot of content that's on this website. So check out my services, the different packages that I have, and I hope that you will consider Tabula Rasa Racing as your coach to help you prepare for your next endurance journey. So thank you guys for listening. I really do appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, things that you would like for me to talk about in the videos, please leave a comment, whether you're listening to it on YouTube or within the podcast itself. You can leave comments. If you're listening to it on the podcast, there's a new feature that is through, I believe it strolls all the way through regardless of platform, but there's an option where it says, send us a text. So I've enabled text messaging, so you can click on that option and send us a text message. If you have questions or if there's something that you would like for me to talk about or explain, a particular approach that I'm using, I'm more than happy to incorporate that. I did that last week with a comment that was left or a question that I found. And I would greatly appreciate it if you guys want to talk about anything in particular, or just leave a review. You can rate and leave a comment for the podcast or the YouTube episode. Click like or subscribe. But going forward, there'll be more content that's coming out for both the podcast and from me as a coach. So again, thank you guys for listening. It's the end of week 12 and rolling into week 13 of the prep for Ironman Florida 70.3. It has been a pleasure coming to you guys, and I look forward to talking with you again next week. And happy training, everyone. See you next week.